everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brianna, this is Coffee, Books, and Bullet Journals, and today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in March. In March, I set a record. I have never read this many books in a month. It was a lot. It was a lot of books. I read 14 books. So I'm going to be talking about these relatively quickly. Now, most of the ones I have talked about, I have a vlog for, and so I will link all of those up in the cards when they pop up. And then also, I will link every Goodreads review. I will go through and try to do that if you want to get my in-depth thoughts on it. So, I'm doing half-star ratings. If you watched my video about my star rating systems, you'll know why. There's a huge breakdown in how I am rating books now, and it's a lot. But I don't want to talk about that in this book or in this video because this is going to be a long one. There's not going to be a ton of time to talk about every single book. But I will probably gush over a few books. It's highly likely. All right, so in the month of March. What month is this? In the month of March, I read 14 books, and I read not so great. Like, quality-wise, not so great. I read possibly the worst book I've ever read, and then the only 5-star books I read were my rereads. So I didn't find any new favorites, which is a bummer, but that's okay. I still had a lot of fun. And yeah, I participated in several readathons. I participated in the rereadathon. I sort of participated in the buzzword readathon, and then I hosted the catch-up-a-thon with Kylie and Crystal. And that's a lot in 1 month, but I think that's definitely why I read so much. All right, so 14 books comes out to 4,490 pages. That is 5 books and 1,648 pages more than I read last March, which is fantastic. But it's not because I was reading a whole bunch of short books. My average page per book, is that right? Average pages per book was 321 pages, so it wasn't like I was reading really small books, a few of them, but not a lot of them. I read some really big ones too. And then my average only was 3.62, and that includes the 2 5-star rereads. So yeah, I read 1 1.5-star book, 2 2.5-star books, 3 3-star books, 2 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 2 5-star books, and then 1 book that I did not rate. And I'll talk about that one first, and that way we can go over it, and you'll see why I didn't rate it. As far as genres are concerned, I read 4 contemporary, 1 dystopian, 1 fantasy, 1 graphic novel, which was a fantasy graphic novel, 3 historical fiction, 1 magical realism, 2 romance, which were contemporary romance, and 1 sci-fi. So very varied month in the terms of the genres that I read. Obviously there were a lot of contemporary, not nearly as many as in February due to the contemporary-athon and the thriller-athon. But yeah, we'll just break these things down and talk about them. All right, so the first book I'm going to be talking about is the book that I did not rate, and that was Voyage on the Great Titanic, The Diary of Margaret Ann Brady. This I read during the rereadathon for the prompt of the book that made you nostalgic, or a childhood favorite, something like that. I can't remember the exact wording of it. And this is a middle grade, written in diary format about, I think she was like a 13-year-old girl who was on the Titanic. She was an orphan, and she was trying to get to America to go to be with her brother. And then she's obviously on the Titanic. She gets rescued and is on the Carpathia. There's a lot of historical stuff at the end of it, which is really cool. I didn't want to rate this because this was a very loved book when I was in middle school, and I think that some of the nostalgia was coming in, and I was just like kind of remembering things. So I didn't want to rate it. I don't know. It sounds weird, but like, yeah. So I just left it off of my rating. But I loved my enjoyment of this. It's very short, and yeah, it was a very good time. All right. If you saw my vlog last week, you'll know You've heard me talk about this. I am very intimately familiar with the term hate reading a book now. This book was horrible. And this is my 1.5 star book. And that is This Is Where It Ends by Marieke Nijkamp. I think is how you pronounce her name, but I'm probably very wrong there. And this book was offensive. This book was about a school shooting. It was about a kid who comes to the school, and during assembly he starts like shooting teachers and goes into this rage, and it's done in four people's perspectives, and for the life of me I don't remember what they were. It was very forgettable in that sense, but then also in the other sense, like, the villain was the villain because he was a bad guy, and there was no rhyme or reason as to why he started shooting his school. Like, I don't understand. Yeah, so this book, 1.5 stars, I could not do it. I don't know, like, some of my very good friends rated this 4 and 5 stars, and yeah, I think I was just more offended than anything else. Now, I haven't been in a school shooting. I haven't been in a mass shooting. I don't know anything, you know, I don't know how that feels. I'm pretty sure the author doesn't either, though, because I did not feel for the characters. Yeah, I have nothing really to say. This is definitely a disappointment. I thought it was going to be really good. I thought this was, I mean, it was a great premise. The whole book takes place in 54 minutes. And so I kind of enjoyed that aspect of it, or I thought I would. And yeah, it was weird. There was also like there was no police officers or no type of security that showed up for like 30 minutes after the shooting. Pretty sure that wouldn't happen because, like, at the same time, so like nobody thought to call 911, but there was these things, these little like blurbs of tweets from kids that are in the school. So like, couldn't we call 911 if we were tweeting about it? Or are we just that shallow? Anyways, did not like this book. Yeah, definitely going to be unhauling it. Maybe. I don't even really want to unhaul it because I don't really want anyone else to read it. It was really bad. Yeah. Anyways, let's go on to slightly more positive things, right? Well, I say that, and they really weren't that much more, they don't get much more positive quite yet. All right, I have two 2.5 star reads, and they actually also both happened last week. And the first one was One Night Gamble by Catherine Garbera, and this was a romance arc that I received from NetGalley. And again, the premise sounded very interesting. It was a meet cute. It was, or not really a meet cute because they like just wanted to like meet and then sex instead of like fall in love. Whatever, that's a romance book for you. It was a boss-employee relationship. It had all of the aspects that I think I would have really liked in it. Unfortunately, I just didn't really buy the romance. I really liked Casey, who is the love interest. I did not necessarily like Talia. She was a little too angsty for me. I found myself literally rolling my eyes a couple of times when she was talking, and it was just like, girl, get your life together. That was my southern accent coming out. I've been in North Carolina all week, and I'm like trying to adjust to Utah again, and I definitely, like, my southern accent came out when I was out there. Off topic. So some things that I really liked about it. I did like Casey. I liked the fact that he was a great guy. He was trying to prove to her that he was still a good guy, that he, despite being a gambler, he was very much in love with her and would do anything for her. And then so she only had, like, her only experience with gamblers, you know, on a personal level was her father, who took all of their money and ran away. So yes, she has a negative opinion of that, but that's the only thing she has. So when he said, oh, I'm a gambler, she immediately, like, was like, oh, he's like my father, blah, 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 blah. There's, you know, nothing good about this. Nothing's good is going to come of this. And yet, she still kept going back to him. Why? I don't know. So there's that. I just didn't really buy it. And if you don't buy a romance in the romance, or you don't buy the romance in a romance book, there we go, that's how I was trying to say it, the whole book falls apart. So that was a little bit disappointing. The second 2.5-star book left me with more questions than answers, but it's a standalone novel. If it would have been the first book in a duology or a trilogy or something like that, this would have potentially been like a 4-star read. But the fact that this was a standalone book and we introduced so many things in this book and nothing really came to fruition, and when it did, it really wasn't fully developed and fully answered. That's Golden State by Ben H. Winters, which is really sad because I was really excited to read this book. This month was just full of disappointments. So this book, I can't really give away a lot because a lot of the stuff that I'm mad about came at the very end. And so if you did want to read this, I don't want to spoil you. But like there was a death, which the entire book is like, that death is a huge part of it. And then at the very end, you find out something that just makes the entire rest of the book be like, huh? I was confused. I don't know. So there's that. There's the fact that, so the whole idea is that Laszlo has this innate ability to be able to tell that somebody is lying. So basically like the air around somebody is changing colors or changes wavelengths or something like that. And he actually gets physically sick when someone starts lying. And this whole premise, the whole place, it's the Golden State, which is a dystopian version of California. Lying is a high crime. And so he's part of the speculative service, and he basically arrests people for lying. And there's just some things like, you know, you're very much above the law. You know, you're above reproach and things like that. And this part where like they're on this case and then all of a sudden they're taken off of the case. And so then him and his partner, who also has that innate ability, can, like, they go behind everybody's back and basically investigate the case on their own. I mean, A, that's like a really overdone, detective trope. And B, if your whole thing is like being above reproach and doing things exactly how you're supposed to be doing them, like, why do you not have any qualms about the fact that you're doing this behind your boss's back? Yeah, but it was the ending really that really just kind of pissed me off a little bit. I did not like it at all. It was just, there was just so much stuff that wasn't answered, or like they threw in a whole bunch of stuff right at the end and you didn't have time to process it. It was a disappointment. Still a very pretty book though. All right, moving on to my 3-star books. We'll start with the one that is a disappointment. Still very much a disappointment, but still a good story, so it got 3 stars. That was The Tattooist of Auschwitz. This was my group book for the Literary Alliance, the book club that I run with Kylie and Crystal. So this was about a man who lived in the internment camp, and he was the tattooist, and so he actually was, even though he was a prisoner, this was the job he was given, and so he actually would have to tattoo the prisoner numbers on the new prisoner's arms. And so like he got a lot of slack for that because they felt like he was helping them. But you know, you do what you have to survive. And then he meets this woman named Gita, and they start this like kind of cute relationship during this prison camp. And the whole book is basically about their love story. And it was very cute. I loved it, that part of it. What I didn't like was the fact that it was 262 pages, when it could have been at least 500 or 600, I think. And then at the very end, you actually find out, or at least I found out at the end, that this is a real story, or a true story, sort of. Like, it's based on a true story. Laszlo is a real person. Gita is a real person. They actually lived that story. But the author chose to make it a fiction-based story. I don't know that that was the best choice. I feel like this was a very powerful story, and the things that I really didn't like about it was that something would happen. I mean, there was something that was super traumatic, and it happened to Gita, and then, and you know, Laszlo's watching it happen, and you get like a paragraph of how that made him feel, and then we switch to Gita's perspective after the event, not during. And I would have liked to know more. I would have liked to know how the characters were felt about what was going on. And because of that, because I didn't get that, I didn't care about the characters. So when characters were talking about family members that had died, I didn't really care, which is sad. I mean, we don't, like, I don't know, like, you should care about these things. But because I didn't get to know the characters and I didn't get to really live their, you know, what they were feeling, I didn't have as much depth for them. All right, the next 3-star book that I read was The Final Six by Alexandra Munier. This was, I listened to this predominantly on audio, and it was a very quick read. I loved the premise. It was about a world which basically, climate change has affected Earth to the point where we are having like natural disasters everywhere. And so they have chosen 24 people to compete for one of the 6 spots to go to Jupiter's moon, Europa, and populate that and basically eventually move everybody to Earth. So I found out that this is not a standalone book. This is, there's a sequel coming next year. So that was a little bit frustrating because it ended on very much of a cliffhanger. So like go into that knowing that, didn't know that. It was a very interesting premise, and I did like some of the stuff. Now it is very much a young adult, so we do have like some of that YA drama in there, which I don't necessarily like, but I'm not gonna fault that too much for this. What I didn't necessarily like was the fact that it's teenagers going to Europa, which is weird. Like, why would we choose 15-year-olds to go to Europa when we could find like actual engineers and scientists? And they tried to explain it in this, and it just didn't really make sense. So, again, I have all of my, like, more in-depth live thoughts in my vlog that I will link up above if you would like, you know, more comprehensive thoughts. Not a terrible book at all. I'm actually excited to read the next one. It's one of those books that, like, if it would have been a standalone, I'd have been like, okay, that's, you know, it's an okay book, moving on with my life. Now, I'm also like, but I want to know what else is happening. All right, the next 3-star book was also an audiobook, and not one that I would have picked up on my own, but when my roommate and I went down to pick up our puppy, this was the audiobook that he had like started. He hadn't started it yet, but he wanted to read it because he had gotten the new, I bought him the new book that Christopher Paolini wrote, and he wanted to read like basically everything up until then. So that was Aragon by Christopher Paolini. I was fine with it because it completed a Pop Sugar challenge. There's a prompt in there to read a book about an extinct or an imaginary character. Obviously, this is about dragons. This is the one book, not the one, but one of few that I will tell you, please, for the love of all things holy, do not listen to the audiobook. The book is great. I might have fallen asleep once or twice, but I mean, I have read this before. It's just been a very long time. So this is about a young boy who finds this dragon egg, doesn't know it's a dragon egg, then it hatches, and he ends up with Saphira, who is obviously a dragon, and they go on this quest. It's very Lord of the Rings-esque, but with a dragon. You know, the tropes in it are so many fantasy tropes, but it was still very good. The only problem, I just hated the audiobook because it's a male author or a male narrator, and the voice that he uses for Saphira is so bad. Like, think of Yoda with a cold. It sounds like this, and I'm feeling, and oh my god. Like, every time she spoke, it was so, like, it became a running joke during this trip. But we had about a 20-hour drive between going there and back, and so we listened to this, and then we listened to part of Eldest, but I definitely fell asleep for that one, so I'm not counting that as a book that I read this month. But this one was, yeah, this one, yeah, no, just don't listen to the audiobook. The book is good, the audiobook is not. All right, moving on into my 4-star books. They were both Hoopla, so I don't have a physical copy for them, but the first one was Moonstruck Volume 2. That's by Grace Ellis, and I don't remember who the illustrator is, but I will put the picture up here, or the cover up here. So I loved Volume 1. I think it made it into my top books of 2018, which for a graphic novel to be there is pretty good, right? It's about 2 female werewolves in a female-female relationship, and there's all these other fantastical beings. There's a centaur, which he's the other main character, and then in this one we introduced some fairies, we introduced a minotaur, and this one, so the plot was really confusing. Like, I wasn't really sure what was going on throughout the whole thing. I got a little bit bored. Basically, like, they were trying to rescue some people from a fairy house, because if the people drank this certain drink at the party, they got stuck in the bubble of the fairy house. Something like that. But to be honest, I really don't know how it got resolved. Yes, and then also the one character is writing a book, or she's writing a graphic novel in the graphic novel. So you get to see little excerpts of the graphic novel she's writing, and so then there's a little bit of jealousy with her and her girlfriend because she let other people read it, but not her. So there was a little bit of that, but it was really cute, and I love those 2 werewolves need to be protected at all costs. I love them so much. I just wish that the plot would have gone somewhere else, or would have been a little bit more clear. So, got a 4-star though. I still loved it. I read it in like one day. Very much enjoyed it. My next 4-star read was Stepbrother Mine by Opal Carew. I listened to this on audio. This is something that I remember Chelsea talking about during Smutathon, so it kind of went up on my radar, and then I saw it on Hoopla, and I had to pick it up, and oh. So, Smut City, so much sexual tension. Every single page, dripping with it. Very short book. I don't remember the exact amount of pages, but it was very short. Like, I finished the audiobook in one day, and it wasn't even a very long driving day. So, like, lots of sexual tension. This is about a woman who is a virgin in college, and she's been like basically cut off from her mother, and so she needs money to pay for her grad school, I think. Something. She needs money to pay for something in college. And so she goes onto this site of basically men who will pay a lot of money to take your virginity. The other guy is on the site as a purchaser, I guess is the word. And so he actually, like, he finds her profile and ends up being her stepbrother from like a previous marriage. So like they're not step siblings anymore because their parents got divorced. But when she was a teenager, they were step siblings. There's definitely an age gap romance because he's well over 10 years her senior. I can't remember the exact. This was the very beginning of the month, so I'm sorry. But yeah, there was so much sex and tension, and it was very, very well written. There was a little bit of a thriller aspect to it at the very end, and just as a trigger warning, there is an attempted rape and a kidnapping. I wish that would have been fleshed out, because it was like boom, it happened, and then boom, it was resolved. So that was like really quick, and I wish that would have been a little bit drawn out, but that wasn't the purpose of the book. It was a romance that had a thriller, so like I get it. So, but still a very, very good book. All right, moving on to my 4.5-star books. The first one was My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Backman. I want to read everything from Frederick Backman now, ever since I read A Man Called Ova. This book is not that. I'm not as impressed with it as I was A Man Called Ova, but I still very much enjoyed it. So this is about a young girl named Elsa. She is almost 8. She is a strong Gryffindor, and she loves her granny. And then her grandma makes up these stories, these fairy tales about magical lands. I think it's called Miamis, that's right. I was like, what's the word called? It was called Miamis, and it's about this magical land, and she has to go on this adventure. So her grandmother dies, she has cancer, and so her grandmother had left her this like treasure hunt throughout this, you know, when she died, that she has to go on throughout the book. And she has to meet all these different people and do this adventure and this quest for Miamis. And it was told through the perspective of the 8-year-old girl, so there was a few times where I was a little bit confused as to like where we were, whether we were in the real world, whether we were on this adventure magical like in her mind. So there were a few things like that, but I don't know that that's necessarily like, it might have been a purposeful, like it was done on purpose, because it's an 8-year-old. Their imaginations are going everywhere. So yeah, not my favorite Frederick Backman book, which I think is a pretty popular opinion. I know that most people, if they like the other ones, they don't like this one as much, and if they like this one, they don't like the other ones as much. I was noticing that. It was still, I mean, it was still very cute, and I was literally laughing out loud sometimes while reading it. So, I mean, there's something to be said about Frederick Backman's writing. The next 4.5-star book was a book that I had received as an ARC, wasn't able to quite get it finished before the release date, so I wasn't able to get it, I wasn't able to read and review it before then, so on release date, it was actually on Scribd as an audio, and I switched to the audiobook, and I'm so glad I did. Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book is definitely different, and I don't know that I can recommend this book to everybody like you can with like Evelyn Hugo, which we'll talk about in a minute. So this book is done in all interview format. So you can see that like instead of a novel, you don't have any descriptions. It's all people just talking. It kind of reminds me of one of those like docudramas or documentaries. It's basically what it is. It's a documentary about a band. And the rise and fall of Daisy Jones and the Six. It has a very, I've been told it's very similar to Fleetwood Mac. I don't know because I'm too young for that. So yeah, but after listening to it on audio, this went from being a like 3-star book to a 4.5-star book, almost a 5-star book. So I have to tell you that the first part of it is slow. About 20% of the book, like I was just like, I don't really care. But after that, it got so good. Once you got into the meat of it, it was just like, I could not stop listening to it. It was like, I would be driving just to go down the street and I would turn the audiobook on. So yeah, it was so good. And the cover is beautiful. It's stunning. I think the UK edition is different, and I like that one as well. So, or I don't know if it's the UK edition or if it was a special edition. I don't know. That was my book of the month. All right, the next 4.5-star book was an ARC that I read with Kaylee from the Dog-Eared Page, and that was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book, it should be a 5-star book. Like, it's close. I definitely think that on my ratings, it was a 4.6. So, like, basically should have been a 5-star, like, almost a 5-star. This was about the President of the United States' son and the Prince of Wales in a male-male relationship. And it was so cute. And I love them with my whole heart. Alex and Henry. I have read too much this month. But anyways, I absolutely loved them. I loved their relationship. It was, they had to keep it hidden because they were public figures. The only reason, and I talked about this during my vlog, the reason that it did not get a 5-star book is that it very much dated itself. So this is kind of like an alternative reality to the 2016 election. So it was a woman that was president, and I loved it. But the thing I didn't like about it was the whole thing was centered around the 2020 election and her basically trying to get reelected. And I feel like while it's very current and very relevant right now, I don't like it when books date themselves, because for me reading it right now, because technically it was taking place in most of late 2019 into 2020, so technically that's the future for me. And while I can get on board with the science fiction being way in the future, I can't really relate to a book that's like taking place a year in the future. Does that make sense? And then I feel like after 2020, it's not going to be as relevant because it happened in the past. Does that make sense? It's a weird thing that I don't necessarily like with my contemporary books. It's just that's annoying. motorcycles. It's like early spring, and so we're really like, we have a beautiful day outside and everybody wants to drive down my street. Motorcycle. Anyways, it's just a pet peeve that I have with my contemporary books. It's something so super personal. Most people love this book. It's still probably a top, even though like it wasn't a 5-star book, I think it will end up being on like a top books for the quarter or whatever. So yeah, I still love it. I will still definitely order it whenever it comes out. All right, and then my 2 5-star books were rereads. They took place during the rereadathon. The first one was Autobiography by Christina Lauren. Obviously, I've talked about this book because I've read it before, and I will also link my rereadathon vlog. This is about 2 boys in Provo, Utah, so south of Salt Lake, which I loved. I love the fact that it is basically a local book, even though like Christina Lauren they don't live in Utah. They did do a lot of research, and I love Tanner and Sebastian with my whole entire heart. This is about Tanner, who is a senior at Provo High, and he is in this writing seminar for his last semester, and Sebastian is the son of a bishop in the LDS church, and he was in the seminar the year before. His book actually got picked up to be published, so he's the teacher's assistant this year. And so then Tanner kind of falls in love with him, and it's really good. Tanner is actually bisexual, he's not gay, and there's that rep for it. And yes, my babies. My babies. All right, and then the last book that I read that was a 5-star read, obviously, that is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't have a physical copy of it with me, but I'm not really going to talk much about this because I did gush about it during my rereadathon, and this video is very long already. And yeah, I loved this book. I love the fact that Taylor Jenkins Reid is really good about taking a social aspect and kind of turning it on its head. So they talk a lot about divorce in this book because obviously she was married a lot, and I don't know, I really love this book, and I have a really hard time talking about books that I really love, especially when they're so well loved by people, just because it's hard for me to like talk critically about this book just because I want to gush about it. So I'm not going to. I will leave my vlog up in the cards, and you can watch that. I'm probably more eloquent there. We shall see. Anyways, you guys, you know what Evelyn Hugo's about. If you've been on BookTube for longer than a week, you know what it's about. Anyways, that is my wrap up. Those are the 14 books that I read during the month of March. Yeah, so April is the Owls Readathon. I'm excited about it. I don't think I'll read 14 because I am doing some Camp Nano stuff. So probably won't have that big of a month. That's okay. If you are new here and you have not yet subscribed, there's a little red button that you can do so down below the video. And all of the links to my social media accounts will be in the description below if you would like to be my friend on any other platform. I will also try to link the Goodreads reviews for these books down in the description below. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day, and I will see you later. Bye!